Hey y'all, welcome to the realm of comics. Like, excuse the congestion, y'all. Like, my energy is good, but I'm still super congested and it sounds so disgusting. It sounds so gross. So I'm sorry. It is what it is. But anyway, welcome to the realm of comics, where we talk everything manga, comics, and graphic novels. Today I'm here to do my October wrap-up. Is it late as hell? Absolutely. Do I care? Absolutely not, because here we are. This is where we're at, and so this is the thing that's going to happen. So I'm going to jump right into it. I did not prepare any type of statistics or none of that. I didn't, because I just didn't. I didn't prepare any type of statistics, although I did end up reading a lot of graphic novels and comics and manga in the month of October. It'd probably be the same in November, because November is a 30 and 30 challenge. So I'm probably going to break up my November wrap up. I think I may do like a 30 and 30 check-in during the middle of the month, just so I can review and kind of talk about the stuff that I've read. I am going to try to keep this as short as possible because, listen, I don't know how long my voice is going to last, and plus I just don't feel like being here for forever doing wrap-ups. Listen, I don't even really do wrap-ups on my other channel because I'm long-winded and I like to talk and I like reviewing, but editing this stuff is like hell. It is complete hell. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So I started off the month of October reading the graphic novel The Keeper by Tananarive Due. This is something that just happened to release at the end of September, and I was like, this would be a great option to read for Black Comedian-a-thon. So I did end up reading it, and y'all, I gave it 3 stars because I'm more generous to authors who step into the world of comics and graphic novels, because it's definitely a different pace. It's definitely a different setting, and sometimes authors are not necessarily used to that, or it takes a lot of direction, and any author that transitions to writing comics will tell you the same thing. This graphic novel focuses on a main character who ends up losing both of her parents. So she's sent to live with her grandmother, and her grandmother has this entity or this spirit that supposedly protects her, and as her grandmother eventually passes away, she tells her that the spirit will be there to protect her, but that she realizes that the spirit is a little bit darker than what she anticipates. This one I struggled with a little bit because I think that I was confused a little bit with the story, and the artwork was good. I liked the color palette choice and everything, but I think that I struggled with the connection between the art and the story. I felt like there were some gaps in the development of what this entity was and where it came from. We got a little bit of that, but not really a lot, enough to develop this into a full-fledged graphic novel. I actually think that this would have benefited from being just a little bit longer, because some of the stuff that was happening didn't really add up in a way that gave us a full perspective of what was going on. I felt like sometimes readers were in the dark, and I don't think that we got full-blown character development. So I struggled a little bit with this one because I was expecting to go into it really being able to enjoy it. I checked it out from Hoopla, but unfortunately it just was not my cup of tea. And so, because of the generosity of me understanding that this is an author stepping into the world of comics, graphic novels, and manga, I gave it 3 stars. Now, if this was a well-established comic book writer, I probably would have given it 2, but I'm a little bit lenient with authors who are first-time comic or graphic novel writers. The next one that I ended up reading was Ice Cream Man Volume 1. This is one that was a reread for me. I really enjoyed it. Ice Cream Man is now up to Volume 8, I believe. It is an anthology series that all centers this evil entity that comes in the form of the Ice Cream Man. We get, I believe, 3 stories tied into this one, if I'm not mistaken. There should be 3 or 4 stories. I think each issue is its own separate story, but it's interesting because in some ways we may see characters pop up from other stories, but just as background characters. So don't go into this one looking for like a cohesive plot, because you're not going to really get one. It does have some outside lingering things going on, but really honestly look at it as a horror anthology series. So in this one we get a couple of different stories. One of them that I found really fascinating, which is one that I mentioned before, where it is a woman and a man that they're drug users. They didn't start off that way. They met at a party, they begin to use drugs together, and they are getting high together, and then they run out of money, and she's like, I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure we get our last hit. She goes out to get this hit, and she ends up doing some really grimy, dirty things in order to get it done. And so she goes and she gets, you know, caught up in some nonsense. She goes home, Ice Cream Man is there and says like, I can give you this last hit, like you can either have it for yourself or you can give it to your partner. And it just kind of shows what happens with sometimes when people are battling addiction, in terms of like, okay, like this is someone that you claim that you love and you care about a lot, and you know that he's going through withdrawal and he's struggling, but you want to consume the drugs for yourself. And of course things don't go the way that she anticipates. I think that what I had forgotten the last time I reviewed this was how the story ended up like full circle with the person, with the guy, like where his mind is. We don't exactly find out how his story ends to a perfect T, but it's kind of insinuated what ends up happening, and it's really, really kind of sad at the end of the day. But I think that if you like horror, if you like anthology, if you want a taste of just like how these stories kind of begin and end, it takes a lot of skill in writing to do anthology series when it comes to comics. And I think that this one, W. Maxwell Prince, is doing a great job. I mean, clearly this is 8 volumes in, so the series is doing very, very well. I know a lot of people in the comic book world really do enjoy Ice Cream Man, so if you're looking for something like that, definitely check it out. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next things that I read were A Silent Voice Volume 1 and Volume 2. I had been meaning to reread this series so I can finally make it through the entire series. I had read volumes 1, I think I read volume 1 before, so it's my second time reading it and then reading volume 2. This focuses on 2 characters, Shoya, and their names are so close, Shoya and Shoko. And so Shoko is deaf. She ends up going to Shoya's school when they're in elementary school, and he's a bully. He's not nice, y'all. He's not nice at all. Like, he picks on her, and eventually he's able to get the rest of his classmates to kind of join in on picking on her, but things kind of go left when he ends up getting them involved to a point where they keep destroying her hearing aids, and her mother eventually just gets pissed off, and she was like, okay, at the end of the day, these hearing aids cost me a lot of fucking money and y'all keep destroying them, so at this point I'm going to get the police involved. And when the police are mentioned, then all of his friends are pretty much like, okay, well, it was all him, it was all his fault, like he's the one who's been picking her. So they kind of turn on him, and instead of being the bully, he becomes a person that's bullied. Like, he gets it bad though. Like, I mean, the kids are absolutely horrendous to him, and we kind of fast forward through time to where it is their last year of high school. She ends up leaving the school because she's bullied so badly, and he has been bullied all the way up to his final year of high school. He is really contemplating, this has a content warning for suicidal ideation. He is struggling a lot with his mental health and what he's been doing with his life, and he's pretty much ready to give it up, and he wants to apologize to her. He's at this point has learned sign language to be able to communicate with her. He goes and he finds her, and they communicate, and he kind of wants to build a type of friendship with her. And at first she's kind of like, no, like I don't want to have anything to do with you, like you made me feel miserable. Her mother the same way, but I can kind of see them beginning to open up to each other and wanting to establish this friendship. I don't know if it's necessarily going to turn into a romantic relationship, but I really did enjoy both of these volumes. I think it's great artwork, great reading. I know a lot of people like A Silent Voice. These just came out in 2 beautiful hardcover omnis that people are absolutely raving about. I can't justify buying them because I do own all 7 in the series. If I did own all 7, I would definitely invest my time and money into it, but unfortunately I own all 7, and so I shall keep all 7. I'm hoping to dive into the rest of the series for 30 and 30, but I did end up reading volumes 1 and 2, and I believe I gave both of these 4 stars. Next, I ended up reading If I Could Reach You volume 3 and volume 4. Can't really say much about these 2 because they are definitely further along in the series. I will say that this does focus on our main character, Uta, who is in love with her husband's, her brother's wife. Yes, her brother's wife, not her husband. It's her brother's wife, and she lives with them because her parents are kind of like not really in the picture, which we do get to see a little bit of that in volume 4. Parents not really in the picture, volume 3 and volume 4. Parents not really in the picture, and so she lives with them, but she's really struggling with these feelings that she has for her. She's not able to confess. She has her friends saying like, you need to confess, just confess and get it off your chest and let it go, and if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. Move on with your life. And she really struggles with that. For the first 3 volumes of this, I got frustrated and I wasn't really liking the dynamic. And it's not that it was a level of me being uncomfortable or feeling like inappropriate things were happening while our characters were still married. I just think that it lacked the depth that I wanted it to go into. I think that I saw potential for that depth, and I don't feel like it captured it that well in volumes 1 through 3. However, by the time I got to volume 4, I said, okay, this is what I was looking for. The complexity that I needed in the series, the development of a lot of the side characters, which side characters are very important in the series, which I do appreciate. So that means that they are fully fleshed out. I was looking for that complexity, and I got it in volume 4. I think that Uta is kind of in a place where she's like, I just, I feel how I feel, but I have to move on with my life to a certain extent. But there's just some interesting dynamics in this, and I'm tiptoeing around it because I can't really say much about it because I'll spoil it. But I ended up giving volume 3 3 stars and volume 4 4 stars. I automatically went and purchased volume 5, so I'm ready to dive into that. The next 3 volumes of manga that I ended up reading in October were all part of the Food Wars series. So I ended up reading volume 16, volume 17, and volume 18 of the series. Now, this is this is the beginning of a very interesting arc of the series. So in volume 16, we are pretty much, and I gave all of these in between 4 to 5 stars, like very, very interesting arc of the story. In these 3 volumes of the series, we are pretty much changing the game up. And I have to tiptoe with this too because it's in the middle of a series. So we are pretty much still in the midst of the Moon Festival, and we see a lot of the Moon Festival in volume 16 and how that ends up turning out. But what is weird is that towards the end of the Moon Festival, we see some reappearance of Irina's father, who has been banned from the Institute. If you did not know, Irina's grandfather runs the Institute, and her father had been permanently banned from the Institute because of some things that had happened. So he comes back, and when I say shit goes down, I mean shit goes down. It's very interesting. So prior to, I think, this arc of the story, we kept hearing so much about the Council of 10. And the Council of 10 in Food Wars is these 10 elite students. They are the best of the best of the best. They are the 10 council seats that pretty much run a whole bunch of stuff at the Institute. They work very closely with the dean. They have a lot of power, which you don't really realize until you get to the specific arc of the story. But before that, they were just kind of like this mysterious people. We meet one, Irina's part of the Council of 10, she's seat number 10, and then we meet, I forget his name, I'm not gonna even remember, he is in the Polaris dorm with Soma and the rest of the kids, and we know that he's the 7th seat. But outside of that, we don't really get much interactions with the other members of the council. In these 3 volumes, they make nasty appearances. Like, they make some appearances in this series that is just, it's interesting. Okay, they're an interesting crew of students at the Institute, and things really do kind of pop off. Things are changing at the Institute, who's running the Institute, how the Institute is functioning, and it is a specific attack on Soma and his friends. And so we get to see all of that develop in these 3 volumes. I read these 3 volumes and I remembered and understood why I love this series so much, and I cannot wait to use 30 and 30 to dive into more volumes in the series. The next thing that I ended up reading was Smile by Raina Telgemeier. This is the middle grade graphic novel, which I do not own, which I need to be owning. So this was a reread for me. I really enjoyed it. 4-star read. This focuses on Raina's own experience with dental care. So it's loosely based on the true story of how Raina ends up losing her front teeth and how it was a weird accident. She ends up losing her teeth, and in the story they have to figure out how to readjust her teeth so that they push them naturally together so she doesn't have that gap, and starting by using dentures and then eventually like closing her teeth. So it's not just a story about orthodontic care or dental care or whatever you want to call it. It really is a coming of age story. So we follow Raina over the course of a couple of years of her transitioning from like middle school to high school, and eventually like coming into her own, making new friends, losing friends, going through bullying, going through puberty. This is like one of those middle grade graphic novels that has it all, and how we all go through those kind of awkward phases, especially going from like middle school to high school, where things just don't ever seem to go in our favor, and you really get to see her develop as a person, as a human, and going through things that I think even adults can recognize, because this is targeted for a middle grade audience. But at the same time, I think that if you are reading this as an adult, you'd be like, yeah, okay, I remember having those awkward moments as a kid, or I remember when I went through like friend group changes, or when like, you know, I had certain friends in middle school, and then when I got to high school, like I wasn't friends with those same people anymore. It's kind of those same vibes, and I think even adults can appreciate that. So I mean, like I said, this is my second time reading it. I really enjoy Smile. I really enjoy Raina Telgemeier as a person, just like as a writer. I think she's amazing. And so I was excited to be able to pick this up again. I'm trying to make it through her 5 graphic novels that she's written outside of the Babysitters Club, and kind of give y'all more of like an insight of where to start, or like if you're interested in Raina Telgemeier and you like these type of themes, then this is where you would start, kind of like an introduction to her as a graphic novel writer, especially for those who are more interested in middle grade graphic novels. I love the artwork in this. I think Raina Telgemeier has a very distinctive art style. I can always tell when she's done work on something, because it just, when you start to follow certain artists, like, you know, because their artwork is just, it just pops, like it, you know, that is their artwork. And so it's kind of the same thing with Raina Telgemeier. Like, as soon as I pick up something and she said anything to them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's Raina Telgemeier's work. Like, I can tell that that's her work. And so I love the work, color art. I mean, the color choices, the color palette that was chosen for this, phenomenal. Definitely pick up Smile if you're interested in middle grade graphic novels. Next, I ended up reading Real Account Volume Number 1. This is one that I ended up picking up on Kindle Unlimited, because I was just seeing what manga was on Kindle Unlimited, and I know that I believe Shay and Izzy both have done videos based on like manga series that you can find on KU, and this is one that I've also heard Bree talk about quite a bit, and she had, I think, had been reading it off of KU. So it's interesting because I read Alice in Borderland not too long after I read Real Account. Real Account is once again kind of like that thriller horror type of manga where we have game elements, sadistic games essentially. So it focuses on a character who's a part of this, I don't want to say world because it is Japan, but it's this reality of Japan that has this social media app called Real Account, and everybody is a part of it. They can do things like blog and tweet and take pictures, and everyone's obsessed with it, and somehow, some way, people get sucked into this game or into this social media platform, and they are forced to compete in games to continue to survive. What I did like about this first volume, which I ended up giving 4 stars, what I liked about it is that there's so much connection to social media that is happening now in the series that it was hard not to feel like, oh my gosh, I feel personally attacked by this. Like the amount of time that people would spend on social media, the way that people would lie on social media, the way that people felt validated by social media, just the interesting things that people would do with having social media and not really being actively aware of what was going on in real life, but social media just became their thing, their everything, with people that you don't even know. Kind of what we do here, which I found to be extremely fascinating. Another aspect of it that was interesting, or the element, is that it's based on your followers. So when you enter into this alternate reality, which your real body is left in the real world, where I think it's kind of like you're conscious to some degree, is in the game or in the social media. I haven't read far enough. I just finished volume 2 this month, so I can't really tell you how or why they're functioning in this alternate reality and who's done it. But when you get there, it's one of those things where if you die in this alternate reality, you die in real life, and anyone who still follows you will also die. So when they get there, immediately everybody's like, oh, I gotta unfollow, because if you end up dying, like, I can't die with you. And so people really get to see how much people quote unquote care about them through this game, which I found to be extremely fascinating, and how much people were willing to be like, nope, I can't be attached to you, like, I'm willing to die. And how some people were like, you know what, you saved my life, I'm gonna follow you to the end. It's a very interesting concept, a lot of commentary on social media. I will go ahead and say right off the top, I did not enjoy volume 2 as much as I enjoyed volume 1, but I am thinking about continuing the series since it is available on KU. I also ended up reading Fear the Funhouse issue number 1, which this was kind of like I believe like a Halloween one-shot, which I did not really enjoy. One-shots that are broken up into shorter stories to create an anthology don't always do well with me, because a one-shot already has potential to be short. I've seen one-shots that are like 100 pages long, but this one-shot literally was still like in between 30 to 40 pages, and working with such a small space and trying to create well-developed stories in such a short period of time just did not work well for me. This is definitely targeted at a younger audience. I would definitely say more of a middle grade audience, which didn't affect my rating, but I think the actual execution of it didn't work that well. This takes place in the Archie universe. It's made up of 3 short stories where they're going camping and they're telling horror or like spooky stories while they're sitting camping out or whatever, and they weren't really all that spooky. I get it because it's for a middle grade audience, but I don't think that they were well developed. I think that if this was a longer one shot, it would have worked better, or if we focus primarily just on one story for this one shot, if it was only going to be 30 pages, it would have worked out better. I did like the art. I'm obsessed with anything that takes place in the Archie universe, but this one shot was just not working for me, unfortunately. And I know that people were really excited for it, but it was just not my cup of tea, to be honest with you. I also ended up reading Alice in Borderland Volume 1 and Chainsaw Man Volume 1. I gave Alice in Borderland 4 stars and I gave Chainsaw Man 3 stars. I did a first impressions of these 2 series, which I link in the card symbol above, so if you want to know more of my thoughts about these 2, definitely check that video. I also ended up reading Chew Volume 1 by John Layman and Rob Guillory. This was a reread for me. This is probably like my 3rd time reading Chew. I talk about Chew all the time. It focuses on a man by the name of Tony who's psychopathic, meaning that he can eat anything and tell you exactly where it came from or how it got to the point that it got to. Like if he eats a hamburger, he could tell you exactly how the cow was slaughtered and killed and processed to be able to make that hamburger. And so he has trouble eating food, and the only thing that he can eat without having a reaction to anything is beets. So that's what his diet primarily consists of. He works for the local police department and he's trying to do a bust on the illegal transfer of chicken. So chicken has essentially been outlawed. You're not supposed to eat chicken. You're not supposed to sell chicken because of the bird flu, and people still eat it illegally. But then when they go into this kind of like underground restaurant that sells chicken, he ends up eating soup, and when he eats the soup, he tastes a drop of blood in it, and the drop of blood lets him know that there's a serial killer that's been working in the kitchen that is responsible for, I believe, like 14 unsolved cases that the police department had. And so when he confronts the guy, he's like, okay, you need to tell me, like, where are the bodies? Where are these bodies? And the guy like refuses to tell him. He kills himself. So then Tony jumps on top of him and eats a piece of his face, and he's able to figure out exactly where all 14 bodies are. Clearly this is not going to go well with the police department. They're looking like, okay, sir, so not only did you confront this guy, he kills himself on the scene, but then you're caught eating a piece of his face. what's wrong with you? You can't work here. There's something wrong. We need to take you to psychiatric evaluation. And then the FBI steps in and says that no, he has this unique capability, we can use him. And the story kind of takes off from there, which is a whirlwind of a story. I was supposed to read volumes 2, 3, and maybe just volumes 2 and 3 of this one last month. I only got to volume 1, but I'm hoping to continue my reread so that I can finish the series off and step into Tony's sister's series, which I believe is just called Chew. I think that's the name of this spinoff of this one, which I'm excited to dive into, but I definitely need to finish the first volumes of this series before I even think about picking up his sister series. I believe I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So I also ended up picking up some single issues, which is going to be interesting because I'm reading a lot of single issues this month, so they're going to be interesting to review. But I did end up reading Namor the Submariner. This is issue number 1, Conquered Shores Part 1. This is, of course, perfect timing because when this video goes up, it is the release weekend for Wakanda, for Black Panther 2. I said for Wakanda. It's release for Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever. And so of course Namor is making his first appearance in this second part of Black Panther. And so people are very curious about who is Namor, who is the Submariner, how does he fit into the Marvel universe. And so I was originally introduced to Namor by reading the original issues of Fantastic Four, like starting with issue 1, like Stan Lee type of starting with number 1 through the Marvel app. So I was familiar with Namor, so I was really interested in picking up this new kind of like ideation of him. And this actually takes place in the future where Namor is older and things have gone left on the planet. Like, things have gone left. People have left. They have fled the planet. Superheroes have left. Just abandoned everybody. And there are humans who are living on the surface but under really dire conditions. And then Namor and the rest of Atlantis have created kind of like this bubble under the ocean where humans can live, but there's some infrastructure issues going on. So he ends up working very closely with, I believe, y'all, I want to say, because first of all, it's been a minute since I read this, and I really don't like going back through and touching these pages once I've read them, because listen, it makes things weird. Okay, so he ends up pairing up with Captain America to kind of fix these issues, but they go on the surface and they meet Luke Cage, if I'm not mistaken, and he's pretty much pissed about how things are going on the surface, but he does meet it with Captain America first. Everyone is significantly older in this book, which is interesting. I'm trying to find a page that I can show you without it being too spoilery, but if you just kind of look at some of these panels a little bit, you can tell right there like how old Cap is and how old Namor is. So they're all older, but there's issues, and there's not really much that I can say. This is the first issue. I can't wait to pick up the second issue though. I think it's going to be a good series. I was very surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. I ended up giving that one 4 stars. And then I ended up reading Punchline, the Gotham Game, issue number 1. This is Teenie Howard's take on Punchline, who is a character that was created by James Tynion. This is following Punchline after she's released from prison, and it starts with this guy who's on social media, basically like he's at this concert. You see his followers go up as he's streaming this concert, which is really actually important to the narrative of the story, which is really interesting. And he encounters Punchline, and you get the opportunity to see the Royal Flush Gang, which is very interesting. I don't want to go into any more details. Clearly, Punchline has some things that she wants to make a statement about. Like, she wants to be the HBIC, and she's finna let everybody know. She's very calculating, very intelligent. Not surprising at all. This I enjoyed. I was very surprised about how much I enjoyed this. I mean, like, really enjoyed this one, y'all. Like, I was shocked because I've always seen Punchline as kind of like this watered down version of Harley Quinn, which I still think it's interesting that Harley Quinn now is becoming more of a morally gray character, although I need to catch up with what's happening with Harley Quinn right now. But I'm so hesitant about it because I'm just not feeling the artwork with Harley Quinn. From Future State, I wasn't really feeling the artwork with no, Infinite Frontier, I wasn't feeling the artwork with Harley Quinn. But I always felt like from what I had read, Harley Quinn was becoming more morally gray and Punchline was becoming a villain, which bothered me because I really like Harley Quinn as a villain, and she doesn't feel so much like a villain anymore as much as like a morally gray character, whereas Punchline is like the villain. And so I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this one. I remember talking about it in my top 5 comics of the week. I was like, I'm gonna get it, but I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. I liked it. This was good. I enjoyed this. I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. Like this was good. I enjoyed this. I also ended up reading Wakanda issue number 1, which once again, this is attached to the fact that Black Panther Wakanda Forever is coming out this weekend. So they're doing a number 1 of this where we're getting the perspective from Shuri. T'Challa's not present. He's missing. And it's supposed to be, I think, talking about really like the history of Wakanda. I think that is the purpose of this, while also focusing on Shuri's interactions with villains and her place in Wakanda since T'Challa's not present. This did not give me everything that I wanted it to give me. It was good, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it's blowing me out of the water. I think that it may do interesting things as a whole, but I think issue by issue, it just may not deliver the way that I want it to deliver, which is fine, but I wasn't as invested as I thought. Like, Rhino was a part of this whole story, and I didn't care. I wasn't invested, and that's the problem. It's not that I wasn't invested because T'Challa wasn't on page. Like, I've read stuff with just Shuri on it, and that's fine, but it just didn't feel serious enough for me. And I don't know if that's my own personal feelings about everything related to Black Panther right now and how emotional that is, and not getting that same energy, not necessarily like the emotional energy, but that same strength and fire that I've been getting from like watching these trailers for Black Panther. So it just didn't deliver the way I wanted to, but I'm interested in seeing like the history that we're going to get of Wakanda tied to the series. I think that's going to be interesting, and I think that it has potential to go somewhere, but I'm just going to have to keep following the story on this one. So I think I may have said like I was going to give it 4 stars, but I like talking about it, the more I think about it, the more I kind of sit on it, like it's more of a 3-star read for me. And the last one that I am going to review is Lovesick issue number 1. This was a disappointment for me, y'all. I read this one. I only ended up giving it 2 stars. It is a, oh goodness gracious, it focuses on a dominatrix who allows fans to sacrifice themselves and get tortured for other fans to watch. And there are group chats that stream live while she does this. It's very sexually explicit. It's not sex on page, but it is explicit sexually and very violent. And I think there could be some interesting character development that goes on with her, because as confident as she is in this first issue, you can tell that some of the comments that like people make about her in the stream and the chat are like, they really are bothering her, but she's trying not to let it bother her. And there was one specific panel that I thought really evoked a sense of loneliness that she's experiencing, even with all of this attention and fame, and that she's torturing these men and they want to be tortured, but I don't know if it's something that she really enjoys or if it's just something that she does. I found some things that were said in the chat, like in the panels, to be offensive, and I didn't like it. And I am more lenient with comics when it comes to things that have been published a while ago. The culture around comics is constantly changing, but there were a couple of slurs that were used in the chat that I did not like at all. I just feel like sometimes there are ways to evoke certain subcultures of a larger internet culture without being offensive, and so I didn't feel like it was necessary in the grand scheme of the story. And so I was just kind of like, ick, not my thing. I'm not sure if this is one that I'm going to continue for the sake of continuing issue by issue. Like, I highly doubt this is one that I'm going to continue to pay for. If it ends up as a trade on Hoopla, maybe I'll pick it up. But as of right now, like, I don't care enough, and I was turned off to the point where I was like, it's just not going to be for me, and that's perfectly fine. So that was one that I had been looking forward to on one of my most anticipated comics for the week videos. I think this was in the first one that I did. I was really looking forward to it, but it didn't deliver, so there's that. All right, y'all, so those are all the comics, manga, and graphic novels that I ended up reading in the month of October, which is great. November is going to be even more. I'm gonna already tell you that right now. It is, I don't know what day it is today, but I can already tell you that I have read nothing but comics, graphic novels, and manga. So the wrap up for November is going to be a little different because it's going to be a lot. Like I said, I think I'm going to do a halfway point check-in for 30 and 30 so that I can lessen the load of what it's going to be like to review this stuff at the end of the month and do a wrap up for y'all. But I'm excited because this is the first official wrap up on the channel, and I'm so excited to be like, oh yeah, I read enough to actually do a wrap up. I'm so excited about that. I think I will always read enough to do a wrap up. I think this year, primarily for me in general, a lot of my reading has been comics, graphic novels, and manga. It just is it's my comfort point. It's what I'm passionate about. So there's that. But anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for a notification. Interested, and follow me on social media. All the links will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.